than usual, so he often stayed up late, staring at the empty sky. He thought about Lyra's quiet smiles and her soft voice. He tried to learn more about her life before they met, but she changed the topic every time. Sometimes, she would trace her finger along the window glass and murmur words he did not understand. He felt a gentle pull in his heart whenever she did that. He knew she carried memories he could not share, and he wanted to earn her trust. He wished she would tell him more, but every time he asked, her green eyes flickered with worry. He longed to know her past, but he also feared the truth that she hid. Each morning, Lyra and Ethan walked together to the small bakery on Main Street. Ethan watched how Lyra greeted the baker with a slight bow. She never ate the sweet pastries that he loved. Instead, she chose plain bread and fresh water. At home, Lyra kept her own cupboard stocked with jars full of seeds and dried herbs from places he had never heard of. When Ethan opened her jars, he found colors he could not name. These jars glowed faintly under the kitchen light, as if they held tiny stars. Ethan felt a chill whenever he saw them. He wanted to ask, but he knew deep down that Lyra might never explain. On weekends, Lyra drove them to quiet fields beyond the town. She parked the old car at dusk and stepped out, barefoot on the cool grass. Ethan followed her with a blanket and a small radio. While he tuned the radio to soft songs, Lyra remained still. She raised her head and let the wind brush her hair. Ethan noticed tiny hairs on her forearms that shimmered in the moonlight. He had never seen anything like it. He blinked hard, but the hairs stayed. Lyra finally spoke. She said that the wind carried messages from far away. Ethan laughed softly and asked what the messages said. She only smiled and shook her head. In the quiet of their home, Ethan sometimes heard a soft humming. It felt like a song without words. Once, he traced the sound to a small device hidden under a cushion. When he touched it, the humming stopped and a pale light faded from the device's cracks. Lyra came into the room and did not seem surprised. She told him it was a comfort tool from her home. Ethan asked why it was here. She replied that it would help her feel calm when she missed her people. Ethan held the device and felt its warmth. He wanted to comfort her, but he also feared what home meant to her. He wondered if he could ever belong to her world. On one rainy evening, Ethan walked home late from work. He felt a strange tension in the air. The streets were empty, and the neon signs flickered. As he passed a corner, he sensed someone watching him from the shadows. His heart raced. He hurried forward, but the feeling would not leave him. When he reached his door, he found Lyra waiting with the keys. She looked at him with concern and asked if he was all right. Ethan nodded but confessed his fear. She took his hand and said softly that he must stay close to her now. Ethan felt both safe and uneasy in her grip. Lyra's phone shone with messages he could not read. She held it close, her brow furrowed. Ethan tried to peek, but she covered the screen and offered him a gentle smile. She said the messages were for her eyes only. Ethan felt a pang of jealousy and worry. He remembered the way she watched the sky and the odd jars in the cupboard. He thought about the floating device, under the cushion and the soft humming. Each little secret built a wall between them. He wondered what she feared more, for herself or for him. He held her hand and promised silently that he would protect her, even if he did not fully understand. As the days passed, Ethan tried to live as normally as he could. He fixed broken shelves in their home and read by the fireplace while Lyra practiced strange symbols on paper. She drew shapes that glowed faintly under candlelight. Ethan watched the glow dance on her face. He marveled at her skill and wondered where she had learned it. He asked her once, but she closed the papers and kissed his cheek. He closed his eyes, savoring her warmth, yet the questions remained. He felt that his love for Lyra was stronger than his fear. He chose to trust her, even without answers. One night, after they ate simple soup and bread, Lyra turned to Ethan. The candle's flame danced between them as she spoke in a low voice. She said she had something important to tell him. Ethan's heart pounded. He held her hand and nodded, ready to listen. Lyra looked into his eyes and whispered that she was not from this world. She said her people would soon arrive and that they would find him now that he knew. Ethan's world spun. He squeezed her hand and whispered that he would stand by her. In that moment, he realized that his quiet life had changed forever and that he was no longer safe unless he faced the truth with Lyra by his side. Ethan woke before dawn. He felt the weight of the night still in his mind. Lyra sat at the small kitchen table, her face pale in the weak light. She held the glowing pendant she had given him the night before. The glow was soft now, like a quiet pulse. Ethan reached for his mug, but his hand shook. Lyra looked at him and said nothing. The silence between them held more than words. As the sun rose, the town grew busy. Ethan went to work, but his eyes kept drifting to the door and the empty street outside. He thought about Lyra's warning and the way she had held his hand. He tried to act normal, but the small things changed. He looked around more, listened harder when someone passed by, and felt eyes on him even when no one was near. At lunch, he saw a man across the park watching him. The man wore a cap and did not move with the flow of people. Ethan turned away slowly, hoping the man would leave. But the man stayed, his gaze fixed like a quiet stone. Ethan felt unease grow like a cold wind. When he went home, Lyra was waiting on the porch. She stepped forward before he could speak and touched his shoulder. She said she had seen the same man in the distance. She had used a small lens from her bag to look without being seen. Ethan asked why the man watched him. Lyra did not answer clearly. She said the man was not alone. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket and showed him small marks on it. The marks were like tiny circles with lines. She said they were trackers, and they could follow energy from people. She rubbed them with her thumb, and the lines faded. Ethan felt a rush of fear, but also a strange hope. She could hide them. That night, Ethan slept poorly. Every small sound woke him. He heard cars pass, dogs bark, and wind hit the old windows. He felt the pendant's weight against his chest. Lyra held him close once, then slipped from the bed and walked to the window. She stood very still, listening. Her hands moved in patterns that made faint light float across the glass. The light shivered and formed shapes. Ethan asked what she saw. She said the shapes were warnings. She whispered that the watchers were not just from her world. Some humans had joined the search. Ethan asked how that could be. Lyra did not answer. She only said that now the danger mixed with other danger, and simple hiding would not work. The next day, Lyra took Ethan to a small cabin outside town. They drove quietly, and Lyra kept her eyes on the road even when there was no one else. The cabin had a low roof and a wide field around it. Inside, it smelled of old wood and clean air. Lyra pulled open a small box and placed several items on the table. One was a map with moving points of light. Another was a thin rod that hummed when it touched the air. She said the cabin was safe for a while. She told Ethan it had old shields hidden in the walls. The shields could hide their energy and make machines fail to find them. Ethan touched the wood. It felt cold but not dry, like it held something beneath the surface. Lyra showed Ethan how to use the map. She asked him to point to the town. A bright dot appeared. Then she made a small movement with her finger, and the dot changed to a dim light. She said the watchers used their own maps to track heat and movement. The shields could bend those maps like water around a stone. Ethan tried the device himself. When he moved his hand, the light shifted. He felt a small thrill. He had thought he would only watch. Now he could help. Lyra smiled, and for a moment, the fear softened. Ethan asked how long they could stay. Lyra said maybe a few days, maybe less. She did not sound sure. The unknown pressed in around them like fog. While they stayed at the cabin, Ethan learned more of Lyra's ways. She showed him a pouch of seeds that, when crushed, released a faint scent. The scent made small images appear in the air, scenes from far places. Ethan saw a rocky world and a blue sky filled with thin moons. He asked why she kept these memories close. Lyra said she used them to remember where she came from and why she had left. She did not speak of the search much. When Ethan asked, she changed the subject and told a quiet story of a child who once played in a field like the one outside the cabin. Ethan wanted to ask if that child was her. She only said the child had a bright laugh. On the third day, Ethan walked outside. The field was calm, but the wind felt sharp. He saw tracks near the tree line. The tracks were not human. They had soft pads and deep marks like the weight of something large. He brought the tracks to Lyra. She knelt, touched them, and her face turned hard. She said the ones who came before used those feet to carry watchers. Ethan asked if they could follow the tracks. Lyra shook her head gently. She said the tracks were old, but the watchers were clever. They used others to mask their path. She put a hand on Ethan's back and said they must leave soon. Ethan felt the pull again, the choice between staying safe and moving into more hiding. That night, Lyra made a new plan. She said they would leave the cabin before sunrise. She had found a place farther away, near a river where the watchers would not come often. She taught Ethan to move quietly, to cover his scent, and to use small signals with his eyes. Ethan listened and practiced. Lyra saw him and said he was learning faster than she expected. He felt pride, even as fear sat heavy. They packed their things. Lyra wrapped the pendant in cloth and placed it in Ethan's shirt. She held the small rod close and whispered that the river place would give them space, but the watchers would adapt. Ethan nodded. He felt the old life falling away. Before they left, Lyra asked Ethan to promise one thing. She said he must not go alone back to town. She needed him to stay close. Ethan promised. He also asked if she trusted him. She looked at him, slow and soft, and said she had to learn. He said he would wait and show he could be part of the danger and part of the plan. They left just as the sky softened. The run to the car felt like moving through thick air. In the distance, a small sound came, like a dog bark stretched and cut. Lyra turned, her face going sharp. Ethan felt the moment break. He saw lights in, the far tree line, moving slow like ghosts. They drove away without looking back. Ethan kept his eyes on Lyra. She did not speak much. Once she touched his hand and said the watchers had picked up a thread. Ethan asked what that meant. She said their path had a small shine, a trace that sharp eyes could follow. She had pulled it, but it would not stay gone long. Ethan asked if they could leave the planet. Lyra shook her head. She said leaving was not simple. It would draw more eyes. They had to go step by step, hiding deeper each time. Ethan felt the road stretch ahead, long and unclear. He looked at Lyra and saw her worry, and he knew the danger was real. In the new place, by the river, the trees made a wall of green. The sound of water hid small steps. Lyra set small devices among the rocks that whispered back when something moved. Ethan learned to listen to the whispers. They slept with one eye open and the other closed. Lyra taught Ethan a quiet phrase in her language. It meant, "Stay safe." Ethan repeated it slowly, tasting the strange sounds. It calmed him. The river moved on, and the watchers moved too, but the quiet place gave them a small stillness. Ethan held Lyra's hand that night and promised that no matter what came, he would not leave her side. She leaned in and placed her forehead against his. The glow from the pendant moved like a steady heart between them. Ask ChatGPT. The river place gave them short, calm hours, but the danger was never far. Ethan and Lyra grew quiet together. They learned each other's breathing, each small move. Ethan watched Lyra when she worked on the small devices. She made them sing, soft tones when the wind moved. Those tones told her if something heavy stepped near or if a light shape passed above. Ethan tried to help. He held the rod steady while she adjusted the tiny lenses. Sometimes she would smile in a small way, and Ethan felt the weight lift for a moment. One morning, Ethan woke to find Lyra gone from the bed. He followed the soft path outside. She stood by the water holding the map again. The dots moved faster, now. She had found new lights far beyond their place. She did not speak at first. Then she said the watchers had found a pattern. They were not just following their trail. They were learning how Lyra hid them, how she bent the signals. Ethan asked if they had a way to hide better. Lyra shook her head slowly. She said the watchers used pieces of old paths and mixed them with new ones, like a web that changed shape when you touched it. Ethan felt the fear crawl back. She touched his arm and said he had done well to come this far. He nodded and asked what they would do next. Lyra moved deeper into the woods. She pulled a small silver ring from her bag. The ring held a thin line of light that bent around her hand. She placed it in Ethan's palm. She said the ring could help him sense the watcher's presence. If someone came close, the ring would pulse softly. Ethan held it and felt the small beat, like a second heart. Lyra showed him how to slow his own energy, how to breathe so the ring stayed calm unless true danger came. Ethan practiced for hours. The ring pulsed less each time, and he felt stronger. Lyra watched, her eyes soft. She said he was becoming part of the hiding, not just a man hiding beside her. In the afternoon, while Ethan collected water, he saw a small shape in the distance. It looked like a bird, but its wings moved in a stiff way. It carried a small light and hovered near the tree line. Ethan froze. He remembered the way the watchers used machines before. He dropped his bucket and ran back. Lyra met him at the edge of the trees. She saw the shape and put a hand on his chest to calm him. She said it was a watcher drone. It had not seen him yet. She took a small cloth and dampened it with river water. She pressed it to the ground and whispered the phrase that meant hidden. The shape wavered and then drifted away, as if the air around it blurred. That night, Lyra told Ethan more. She said her people had rules. They could not destroy the Watchers without proof of danger. The Watchers were not all cruel. Some believed they did right by tracking those who left their orders. Lyra had left because she did not want to follow the hunt. She found Ethan by chance. Meeting him changed her path. Now, the Watchers were learning from their own tools. They had started using human allies, ones who did not know the whole truth. They used them to gather small pieces of life, and then they put the pieces together like a puzzle. Ethan asked if those humans understood what they helped. Lyra said most did not. They only saw a chance to gain favor or to protect their own, and the Watchers gave them small rewards. The truth hid behind simple choices. On the 5th day, Lyra and Ethan heard a sound from the far hill. It was a low echo, like far drums, soft but steady. The devices by the river shivered. Lyra said the rhythm matched a call she had heard long ago. It was a Watcher's signal to gather. She said they would come closer, not just in small search groups. They would send one to talk first. Ethan felt his stomach twist. Lyra told him to stay calm. She needed him to help gather information. They could not run again so quickly. They needed a way to know the Watcher's plan. Lyra dressed in quiet clothes that blended with the trees. She wrapped her hair in cloth so it did not shine. Ethan watched her prepare. She handed him a small mirror with a dark surface. She said he could use it to see what the Watchers sent without showing himself. He held it and saw faint shapes in the dark reflection. Moved dots, a line of light that stepped like a slow march. Lyra said the Watcher messenger would arrive at the river edge the next evening. They would bring a voice box and ask for the hidden one. Ethan's heart beat fast. He did not like the thought of talking to a Watcher. Lyra told him he would not speak. He would only watch. She would do the speaking and keep him safe. The day passed slow. Lyra taught Ethan small words from her world. That meant truth, safe, and stay. He repeated them until the sounds felt like his own. When the sun went down, the air grew thin and the river quiet. The Watcher came. It was not a large ship or a loud machine. It was a tall figure in simple clothes with a small box hanging at the waist. The figure walked slowly, his steps careful. Lyra stood near the river and Ethan stayed behind a thick tree. The Watcher looked around, then lifted the box. A soft voice came asking for the hidden one. Lyra stepped forward. She did not tremble. She said she was the one they sought, but she would not go alone. The Watcher's eyes moved to the tree line, and Lyra smiled slightly. She said she had something they wanted to talk about. The Watcher spoke of balance, of rules broken, and of a path back. He said Lyra had left without permission. He asked why she hid with a human. Lyra said love made her choose him. The Watcher did not answer. He asked if she would return. Lyra said she would not. She offered a simple trade. She would give a small secret of her world if they promised to leave Ethan alone. The Watcher paused. He was learning the human side now. He asked why Lyra would protect someone who did not know their world. She said Ethan's heart was open. The Watcher stayed quiet for a long time. Then he pointed to Ethan's direction without looking directly, testing if Ethan watched. Ethan held his breath. The Watcher asked Lyra for a map of her hiding places. She held her ground and gave him a piece of empty paper. The Watcher left, saying he would send word. When the Watcher left, Lyra closed her eyes. She looked tired. Ethan came out from behind the tree. He stepped to her side. She touched his cheek. She said the Watcher's message held a seed of hope and a thread of danger. The Watchers now knew she did not go alone. They might try to use Ethan to find her. Ethan said he would not let that happen. Lyra held his hand and whispered the word for together. Ethan said the word back, feeling it settle in him. They walked back to the small shelter. The river sounded soft, and the night felt both heavy and calm. They had the Watcher's words. They also had each other. The Watcher's visit changed everything. Ethan and Lyra spent the next morning in quiet talk. Lyra said the Watchers would try two things. First, they would watch Ethan closely to find her. Second, they might send someone who seemed like a helper, a human who offered safety but served the Watchers. Ethan felt anger and fear. Lyra placed both hands on his shoulders. She said they would use the Watchers' move against them. They would act like the danger was growing and then slip away when the Watchers focused on the wrong place. Lyra taught Ethan how to make small false trails. She showed him how to leave marks that looked like they came from their shelter, then hide them deeper. She tied small threads of light in the grass that flickered when touched, making the Watchers think the river place was still active when actually they planned to move. Ethan worked with her. He learned to slow his steps, to breathe quietly, to set the false marks, and then erase his real path. Lyra said the Watchers knew the shape of their fear, but not the shape of their plan. Ethan felt sharp pride. He felt for the first time that he could help more than just hide. As they did this, a new sound came from the woods. It was a soft footstep rhythm, gentle but careful. Lyra froze. She put a finger to her lips. They both moved toward the noise using small shadows for cover. Behind a thick bush, they saw a man. He was thin with tired eyes, and he held a small bag. He did not wear the heavy gear of the Watchers' agents. He looked like any farmer from the town. Lyra watched him for a moment, then stepped out slowly, showing her hands open. Ethan stayed back but kept the ring glowing in his pocket. The man lifted his hand slightly and said, in a quiet voice, that he meant no harm. He had come because he heard voices on the wind. Lyra's face stayed calm. She asked how he heard. He told them he worked near the edge of the town and sometimes heard strange rhythms in the night. He had tried to follow them and found the river. Lyra asked if he worked for the Watchers. The man shook his head. His eyes flicked to Ethan. He said he had seen Ethan in town, and he had felt the pull, the worry on Ethan's face. He said he did not know the truth, but he felt the danger was not simple. Ethan stepped forward slowly. He asked the man why he was here. The man said he wanted to help. He had a sister who once lost her home to people who lied. He could tell when someone hid truth in their silence. Lyra did not trust him yet. She kept her guard. She asked him small things, questions about the town, about where he slept, about how he heard the wind. The man answered without pause. Then Lyra asked why he did not go to the Watchers with what he heard. He lowered his head and said he had tried once. The Watchers gave him a small gift, then took nothing more. He saw their eyes on his family after that. He left. He had come here because he thought the voices were not their voices, and he wanted to know who they belonged to. Ethan looked at him and saw the fear behind the honesty. Lyra finally nodded and told him to stay away from the shelter but to watch the road. She gave him a simple signal, a carved stone with a small line. If he saw people moving too fast, he could drop the stone near the path and Lyra would know. With the new ally, their plan grew stronger. The man, whose name was Jonas, watched from a safe distance. He kept the Watchers' movement quiet by sharing small lies when asked near the town. Ethan and Lyra prepared to move again. Lyra said the Watchers would likely try to push them toward a trap soon. They needed a place the Watchers would not think of. Inside the old mine far from the river. The mine had dry air, thick stone walls, and a forgotten tunnel leading outside the valley. Lyra had seen its map long ago when she first arrived. Ethan was uneasy. The mine was dark and could hide many things, but it also held old dangers like falling rocks and deep holes. Lyra said they would go slowly, and she taught him how to feel the small shifts in the stone so he would not step where it might break. On the day they moved, the false trails glowed softly in the river grass. Ethan and Lyra walked silent, carrying their few items wrapped tight. Jonas watched from the hill and dropped the carved stone when the Watchers' men walked near the old path. The men followed the false glow, and Lyra watched from a safe place. When the Watchers went deeper into the woods, Ethan and Lyra slipped past, moving toward the mine. The entrance was hidden behind fallen trees. Inside, the air smelled dry and cool. Lyra lit small lights that hung like slow fireflies. Ethan saw dark shapes on the wall, old drawings of miners long gone. He felt the past touch him. Lyra said the mine held stories of people who survived hard times. Ethan touched the wall and felt those stories settle, giving him quiet strength. They built a small place near the inner tunnel. Lyra used pieces of old metal and wood to make a low bed. Ethan cleaned a patch of ground and stacked stones to make a small stove. They set the watching devices in hidden holes in the wall. The mine was quieter than the river place, but it felt heavier, like a long breath held. Days passed. The Watchers came close a few times, and Jonas sent them small signs that confused those who tracked. Lyra and Ethan heard the Watchers' machines above, but the stone hid them. During the quiet hours, Lyra opened more of her world to Ethan. She told him of the place she came from, far beyond the stars, a world of pale cities and soft light. She explained that her people believed in balance, but also in order. Those who left without reason were hunted, not for cruelty, but because their choice could break the order that kept worlds from crashing into each other. Lyra had left because she saw humans as different. Their choices came from heart, not just Rule. Ethan listened and asked for names, for stories of her childhood. She gave him small bits, like the name of a field where the wind smelled like metal or the sound of laughter that made her feel young. Ethan shared his world too, the way the sun felt on his skin, the smell of rain, the sound of his childhood, street. They built a bridge between the worlds in small words. One night, Ethan woke to a faint scrape. He felt the ring pulse softly. Lyra was already awake, listening. The sound came from deep inside the mine. They moved slowly toward it. In a narrow tunnel, they found a small creature trapped. It was not like any animal Ethan had seen. It had many thin legs and glass eyes. It made a soft sound, like a whisper, of pain. Lyra knelt and gently freed it. The creature crawled onto her shoulder and glowed faintly. Lyra said it was a Watcher scout, but not the kind sent by her people. It had been lost and frightened. It chose to help her because she had helped it. The creature's glow spread into the tunnel and Ethan felt a small warmth. Lyra thanked it. It left a small token on the ground, a tiny crystal that pulsed with quiet light. She told Ethan that the creature might watch over them in secret now. The days grew into a month. Ethan and Lyra learned the shape of life in the mine. Their fear did not leave, but it became a part of their rhythm. They shared quiet meals, laughter that sounded small but true, and moments of deep quiet where they held hands and listened to the stone breathe. Jonas still watched outside. He brought food sometimes and news in small codes. He said the Watchers had not given up but slowed. Lyra believed it was because the Watchers were losing the trail, not because they were kind. Ethan knew the cost of the fight. He also knew his choice had led him here, and he had no wish to turn back. Ask ChatGPT. Months passed in the mine. Ethan and Lyra had built a life of small routines. The Watchers still searched, but their moves became slow, like a tired animal circling far away. Jonas brought news that some of the Watchers' humans had begun to doubt the hunt. The quiet token from the lost scout glowed sometimes, warning them when danger shifted. Ethan learned more of Lyra's language. He could say simple sentences now, and Lyra rolled her eyes with soft smiles when he tried to speak poorly. They both carried the weight of danger, but they also carried hope. One day, Lyra said they could try a new move. She had learned from the Watcher messenger that the Watchers respected signs of truth. She believed they could make a small offering to show a different path. The offering would not be surrender. It would be a plain thing, a message from Ethan, not from Lyra's. Watchers, asking that the Watchers leave him alone and take only what they needed to keep their own order. Ethan felt the risk. He had seen the Watcher's face. He knew they could twist words. Lyra said she would stand with him, and the Watcher would meet them in a place between the old valley and the river, where the air flowed and the stone listened. Ethan agreed. They prepared the message together. Ethan spoke slowly, and Lyra wrote the Watcher language in soft light on a smooth stone. The message said that Ethan was no threat. He had chosen to stay with Lyra by love, not by breaking any rule. He offered that if the Watchers let them live hidden and left the humans who helped them alone, he would share nothing of Lyra's world and would not try to spread the hidden places. It was a promise from his heart. Lyra added a mark from her own past, a small symbol of balance, to show that she too accepted the weight. They carried the stone in a cloth, and Lyra held Ethan's hand on the walk. The Watcher came at dusk. He stepped from the line of trees with the same quiet moves as before. His eyes watched the ground, then lifted to Ethan and Lyra. The place was open, with wind that could carry sound far. Ethan stood firm. He held the cloth between them and slowly showed the stone. The Watcher's face did not change, but his voice was softer this time. He said he had not expected the human to speak. Ethan bowed his head slightly and said the words Lyra helped him learn. The Watcher listened. Lyra stood beside him, her hand near her side, ready but calm. The Watcher read the stone. He touched the marks, and for a moment the air held still. He asked why Ethan would offer peace to those who chased him. Ethan answered that he had seen the cost. He had watched fear grow in Lyra's eyes. He did not want their hunt to break the small life they built. The Watcher looked at Lyra. She said she had no wish to fight unless forced. She said she left because she believed in choice, and she chose Ethan. The Watcher listened with the weight of rules in his silence. After a long pause, the Watcher spoke. He said the Watchers would test the promise. They would watch from far, but they would pull back the direct search. The humans who had helped before would not be touched. He said, if any hidden action broke the balance in a loud way, they would come again. Lyra asked what loud way meant. The Watcher said any move that made the hidden world force its way into the open without care. Ethan promised. The Watcher placed a small stone near the ground, a sign that the promise had weight. Then he stepped back, and his shadow slid into the trees. They left the meeting place slowly. Ethan felt new air in his chest. Lyra said the Watcher had given them space, but the space could close if they were careless. She told him they must still be quiet and careful, but the sharp fear could ease. Jonas met them later. He had seen from the hill and brought a small smile. He said he believed the Watcher had truly stepped back. He left a small basket of fresh food, and Ethan gave him a soft thanks. Jonas said the life they made now was strange but true. Ethan nodded. He thought of the long road from the first secret, the hidden tools, the false trails, and the quiet trust. In the days that followed, the mine felt different. The devices still watched, but their pulses were gentle. Lyra and Ethan moved like people who had been saved from a storm and now watched the calm. Ethan worked on the small stove, making simple stews with roots Jonas brought. Lyra sat with him, and they spoke in short phrases and laughter. She told him stories from her child, field again, and this time she added a new one, the first time she felt safe after leaving her world. Ethan told her about the rain that fell soft and heavy back home, and she reached out to touch the memory as if it were real. Then, one silent morning, Jonas came in running breathless. He held up his hand to stop them. He said a group of men had come through the town asking strange questions. They did not wear watcher marks, but they carried small devices that echoed the lights of the old search tools. Jonas had kept the carved stone signal ready. Lyra listened. She moved with quiet speed and checked her maps. The men were not coming directly to the mine. They asked the town about people who moved like shadows. Lyra's face went hard. Ethan asked if the promise had broken. Lyra shook her head. She said the Watchers were testing the edges. They were making small moves to see if fear returned. The Watchers wanted to know if the hidden life would flare in reaction. Ethan felt the old tension, but now he had the promise to hold, and it made him breathe deeper. They made a plan. Lyra said they would let the townspeople see nothing. Jonas would talk in small lies, soft errors that sent the men toward old paths with no value. Ethan and Lyra would stay inside. The Watcher's stone had given them a thin shield of time, and they used it. The men left after a week, tired and confused, with no proof of hidden life. Jonas told them the Watchers had spoken to him again in coded whispers, and the tone was calmer. The test had passed. With the slow passing months, the story of Ethan and Lyra grew. They no longer moved every few days. The mine became a home, not just a shelter. Ethan built a small shelf for the glowing seed pouch and placed the Lost Scout's crystal near it. Lyra planted strange seeds near the entrance that bloomed only in twilight, giving soft light without sound. Jonas came less, but he kept the path safe by keeping quiet watch. Ethan and Lyra talked about leaving the valley someday. Lyra said they would go, but carefully, to a place where fewer eyes came. Ethan agreed, and he added that he wanted to see her home, not to bring her world into his, but to stand in the place she once grew up and understand the choice she made. One night, holding hands by the small fire, Ethan said he was thankful. He said he had a life that no one would believe in a simple town story. Lyra looked at him and said she was thankful too. She had a human beside her who learned to speak her soft words and who carried a hidden promise. They both looked at the dark tunnel entrance. Beyond it, the world stayed quiet. They knew danger could return, but they also knew they had something stronger now. A shared path, a promise earned, and the quiet power of choosing each other.